Breaking news here on CBS Sports HQ. The new college football AP Top 25 poll is out after we capped off a wild Week 13. In total, there were 7 teams that were ranked in last week's AP Top 25 poll that lost this past weekend. Here's a look at your new top 10 teams. No change with the top 4, but Indiana's loss made some room for Notre Dame, who rounds out the top 5 now. Georgia, who has officially clinched their spot in Atlanta at the SEC championship game, moves up to 6. Speaking of the Hoosiers, though, they fall to 10. And take a look at Miami and SMU. They're at 8 and 9, representing the ACC. A look now at 11 through 20. Hello, Clemson. Tigers moved up 5 spots, now in the top 12, while Alabama falls 6 after their brutal loss to unranked Oklahoma. We're going to talk about that in just a bit. Elsewhere in the SEC, ton of chaos this weekend in that conference. Ole Miss falls to 15th after their loss to the Gators. There's also chaos in the Big 12 as you see Arizona State there breaking into the top 20 ahead of BYU, whom they beat. A look now at the rest of the teams that round out your new AP Top 25 poll. Colorado, they had their heart broke by Kansas, who has just been rolling, and the Buffaloes fall 7 spots to 23 in the latest rankings, as do Army. They fall to 25. Wow, chaos. It's arrived. It is here. We're going to dive into all of this and so much more as we welcome you to CBS Sports HQ. I'm Jordan Giorgio alongside Bryant McFadden, and Brad Crawford joins us from afar. I was trying to figure out where do we begin after this past weekend, but I say we begin in the SEC and with Alabama. For the first time since 2011, Alabama did not score a touchdown. Yeah. Let that just sink in for a second. They suffered a brutal loss to Oklahoma. It was a game that many really didn't think twice about, but the first year now for Kalen DeBoer, BMAC, now 2 losses to an unranked team. Is it panic time in Tuscaloosa?
It's not panic time, but his first year so far with the season still in play, it has been a disappointment because, to your point, having 3 losses already on their record is something that we haven't seen in quite some time. Playing a full ball game and not scoring a touchdown is something that we haven't seen in quite some time. Oh, by the way, the team that was able to dominate you was a team that was still trying to figure things out, been super inconsistent in the Oklahoma Sooners. Not to mention, Kalen DeBoer inherited a very, very experienced, talented team with a unique, athletic, great quarterback in Jalen Milroe. And what we've seen inconsistencies, and we've seen teams that sometimes they sleep at the wheel in certain ball games. And that's why they're in a situation right now. Yes, you still have to win out, but you got a window watch now. You got to watch and see what's happening around you because they're going to need some help. But this is not the team, Brad, that I thought I would see, even without Nick Saban being on the sideline.
Yeah, I think it is panic mode right now because we're talking about a roster, Bryant, that really was a 4th and goal conversion away from reaching the national championship game last year. They brought back that star quarterback in Jalen Milroe. The offensive line has not been good. That's the 2nd loss this season where Alabama looked as if the Crimson Tide were not prepared. They lost in Nashville to Vanderbilt as a 3-touchdown favorite, lose last night in Norman as a 2-touchdown favorite at Oklahoma. Nick Saban only lost like 3 times total as a heavy underdog in 10-plus years at Alabama. So I think it is panic mode. Alabama right now is on the outside of the playoff, looking in at 8-3 overall. That's just not where any of us thought they'd be at this point in the season.
All right, so we got a split here. You're saying it's not panic mode right now?
Because they still can potentially get in if some more chaos was to happen.
Do you think they should?
No.
Okay.
But I think, based on how the committee has done their rankings, if there's a few slip-ups from some teams that are currently inside the top 10, Brad, with Alabama potentially, but they're at 13th right now. I mean, they're 1 spot outside of being the top 12. So if there's a slip-up, a few upsets that could happen this final week of the collegiate season, they can find themselves sneaking right back in the top 12. So that's why I'm not quite at the panic button just yet.
No, it's a good point.
Overly concerned, but you still potentially could have some help because think about this. Last week, we did not expect to see the upsets that we saw. Ole Miss losing to Florida. Alabama losing to Oklahoma. There's a lot of things that happened. BYU losing to Arizona State. There's a lot of things that shook up the college football rankings in terms of what we're talking about today. And those same things could happen next week that could help Alabama, potentially.
I think some of the other conferences, a lot of chaos occurred there, so maybe it opens up some other doors. Speaking of open up doors, elsewhere in the SEC, Brad, we saw Ole Miss and Texas A&M also suffer some losses. What doors do those losses maybe open?
Yeah, the good news for A&M is they still control their own destiny, because if they beat Texas next week at Kyle Field, they'll play Georgia and Atlanta, and the SEC champion will get one of those top 4 seeds. But for Ole Miss, man, that's probably a season finisher for Lane Kiffin. Losing as a double-digit favorite in Gainesville, tough loss there. Jackson Dart, 2 late interceptions. Ole Miss was a team just 2 weeks ago, had beaten Georgia at home and was inside the top 10. Now a win over Mississippi State next week, that's not going to be enough to jump some of these teams Ole Miss has to get in to make the playoffs. So Ole Miss on the outside looking in, as Bama is right now.
All right, let's get to the Big Ten now, you guys. It was a game that we were all looking forward to watching. It was undefeated Indiana taking on Ohio State. Hoosiers unbeaten no more. They suffered a 38-15 loss. Here was Curt Cignetti, head coach for Indiana, after the game when he was asked if his team, now 10-1 on the season, deserves to be in that college football playoff. Take a listen.
You said earlier that you don't make the decision about who's in the playoff. But do you think going into this last week that you should be one of the 12 teams that's in the playoff based on your body of work to this point?
Is that a serious question? I'm not even going to answer that. The answer's so obvious.
That you should be.
All right. Thanks, Coach. Thanks, guys.
Thanks for asking. Well, Coach Cignetti certainly seems upset, obviously, after the loss, but almost a little bit insulted, I think, after that question was asked. What do you think? Indiana, do they deserve to have a spot at the table when you take into consideration BMAC's strength of schedule and also that 23-point loss to the Buckeyes?
23-point loss clearly is not a good thing, but if you watch the game, I mean, the first half, that muff punt jump-started the efforts for Ohio State early in that ball game. But with them having a favorable schedule, being dominated by Ohio State, and then looking at some of the teams that lost in front of them, no question, they should be where they are currently ranked. If the playoffs were to start today, I believe the Hoosiers should have a seat in the tournament. And here's why. They've been really, really good. They've beaten the team they're supposed to beat. And then they started to get the radar on them. People started to pay attention, and they lived up. Granted, they fell short yesterday, but look at some of the other teams that fell short, which provides the opportunity for Indiana. So with the chaos that just took place, I think they're still one of the top 12 teams in college football, and they deserve to be inside the top 12.
And I think Indiana deserves a home playoff game as maybe the 8 or the 7 seed. As long as they beat Purdue next week, the Hoosiers undoubtedly are going to be in the playoff. We wanted to see if they could hang with Ohio State. And with 5 minutes left in that game, they were down 2 scores. And those 2 scores were decided by a muff punt, as Bryant mentioned, and then Caleb Downs had a punt return in the first half. That's 2 special teams miscues. Other than that, these teams played pretty even. Indiana looked pretty good at the line of scrimmage, too. So despite a soft schedule, Indiana's going to finish 11-1. We're going to have several SEC teams with 3 losses. That's just too many losses. Indiana has done more than enough. They've controlled most of these games now. 3 months of sample size. Write Indiana in Sharpie as long as they win next week.
You know, Brad, I always go back to what Leger Douzable told us a few weeks ago. It's hard to win week after week in this sport. You know that firsthand. Yep. And, you know, despite yesterday's loss, I think we all can agree we're rooting for this team. They deserve to have a seat at the table. Let's get to the Big 12 now here. Man, oh, man, things came crashing down in that conference, specifically for Colorado. And we said this last week, watch out for Kansas. They've been playing heartbreaker each and every week. Now get their 4th consecutive win against a ranked opponent. What went wrong for the Buffaloes last night?
You know, some of their issues from a year ago, Brad, and earlier in the year defensively surfaced again. They couldn't stop the run. And that's something that we were raving about their defense over the last few weeks, how dominant they become, how much better they become in the trenches. Yesterday against Kansas, Kansas ran the football left and right. Didn't matter what. How? They were successful. They lost the battle at the point of attack, which led to their defense being vulnerable on all 3 levels. When you allow a team to start running the football, the entire playbook is open. And that was something the Buffaloes got away from in terms of offensive production against them. They were playing better. They were tackling. They were being disruptive. They were playing on the opposite side of the line of scrimmage. Yesterday, Neal had an unbelievable day. They couldn't stop him. Anytime he touched the football, Brad, he was successful. And that just took the entire rhythm out for Colorado. And that's why they got upset and got dominated the way they did. Because when you talk about not being able to stop the run, what does that do? Controls the clock. Now you're a star-studded quarterback and talented wide receiver. They're sitting on the sideline. And then when they get into the game, they have to press because your defense can't get any stops.
Brad, I do want to ask you about, with all the chaos in the Big 12 yesterday, there are a ton of scenarios that can kind of play out. Break down this Big 12 race for us, because I don't know where we're at this point.
Yeah, there's so many Big 12 chaos scenarios right now, combinations in the way of multi-team ties. It'll make your head spin. I'll try to keep it as simple as possible. So Arizona State and Iowa State right now are in the driver's seat to play in Arlington here in a couple weeks. If the Sun Devils and Cyclones win next week, they're in. BYU will be in the title game if the Cougars beat Houston and Kansas State beats Iowa State. BYU would then play Arizona State for a shot at the playoff. In Colorado, we said last week, going into week 13, the Buffs controlled their own destiny, but not anymore. In order to reach the title game, the Buffaloes have to beat Oklahoma State, and then they need 2 of those 3 teams they're tied with to lose: BYU, Arizona State, or Iowa State. So Colorado really made things sticky on Saturday afternoon, losing to Kansas, and now Arizona State looks like the Big 12 front runner.
Wow, what a world. Buckle up. We're just getting started. Get more college football talk and previews for next week, the regular season finale of the season. Week 14 is here. You can hear all of the previews, all the college football talk on the Cover 3 podcast. The guys already have Week 13 instant reactions to all of the chaos that occurred yesterday. All you got to do is scan that QR code on your screen and watch and listen wherever you get your podcasts.